if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, then yes, a time would come, not in the too distant future, when the price of oil might be hitting record highs. Targeted subsidy, to clients of Benazir income support program. I mean, don't give a fuel subsidy to somebody who drives a Land Cruiser.
Absolutely.
So jet fuel has gone up by 100% roughly in the international market, but in Pakistan, jet fuel has gone up by 150%. So what they are doing is that they are then, jacking up the prices for high octane and jet fuel, and then cross-subsidizing those who are using it at the petrol pump. People using super, 91, 92,
Right.
whatever grade fuel. Again, this is not a very good strategy. My advice to the government would be pass on the price increases to the final consumers, give target subsidies, and do not increase jet fuel prices by 150%, because this is now creating a very serious challenge for our aviation sector. We are already down to 3 or 4 days, working days in the week, and down the road, all of these things, fewer working days, less consumption of oil, is going to feed into taking away from our economic growth.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Money. I'm your host Fatima Attarwala. My guest today is Dr. Aqdas Afzal. He's an economist, he's an academic, he has advised ministries in GCC countries. But for me, there's a special relationship because he's my former professor at LAMS. Hello, sir. Welcome to my show.
Thank you very much, Fatma. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you from being a student in the classroom to having you as my guest. I think that's a lovely arc from what?
I think, thank you for the gracious introduction, first of all. And I think I'm very happy that to see one of my students, former students, have done so well in life. So I'm very excited to be here.
I mean, when I first talked to you, I was just like, you're so familiar. I still cannot believe that I couldn't recall your name. Because actually, I had missed my midterm and I would have flung the course if it wasn't for my professor being so gracious as to give me an extension. So I'm doubly pleased to have you here and doubly pleased to have this conversation with you.
That's great to know, and I think you might want to tell your audience that there is no quid pro quo.
No, obviously.
This is not in relation to giving you that opportunity to retake your midterm.
You did give me the opportunity to retake my midterm, but I don't think I could give a quid pro quo. This is Dawn. We don't do quid pro quos. If we did, we would not be in the financial crisis we are right now.
Good to know.
Just like Pakistan is in a financial crisis, especially given everything that is happening with the US-Iran conflict. So there are rumors that the oil prices will hit $200. I don't think it has hit $200 as yet in the history of oil, has it?
No, they haven't risen that far. And yes, there are concerns about potential spikes in the price of oil. Matter of fact, in the last great financial crisis, or roughly a few years after that, or around that time, oil prices hovered around $150 per barrel. They haven't quite reached that level since. In the recent crisis, Middle East crisis, oil prices briefly hit 120. And based on the news that come out of the Middle East crisis, they again go up. But then there are certain statements from certain officials, primarily the White House, which bring more calm to the markets, and then we see the oil price coming down. But yes, there are fears that if this conflict continues unabated, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, then yes, a time would come, not in the too distant future, when the price of oil might be hitting record highs.
Given that in the US, at the time we are shooting this episode, the gasoline price has already crossed $4. The midterms are around the corner, it's in November. Trump is already talking about his next potential war in Cuba. So do you think it's likely that there will not be a ceasefire and that we'll continue in this conflict for oil prices to rise this high? Because even though oil prices have been volatile, they haven't crossed, say, $120, for example. They haven't reached the Ukraine crisis peaks yet.
Right. So I think the situation is very concerning. One is reminded of the recent movie that won the Oscar, one battle after another. That seems to be like the situation of our geopolitics at the moment. And yes, if there are more tensions in the world, for example, if there is the situation going south in Cuba, that might then have an impact on oil prices if a ceasefire is not announced in the near future. But then one is very happy to know that Pakistan is playing a great role towards peace building for the entire world at the moment, and I would really like to appreciate our Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Mr. Ishaq Dar, who is involved in endless shuttle diplomacy around the world. So I'm very hopeful that some resolution will be reached in the coming weeks.
In the coming weeks. So, I mean, by the time, it would be too optimistic to assume that by the time this episode goes up, the war would be over, but maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, could we hope for that?
Well, I don't want to engage in any kind of crystal ball gazing, but I think from the statements that I have seen in the media and the endless efforts being made by Pakistan, I think things are already moving towards a ceasefire in the near future.
Because the recent address to the nation that Trump had, I think there was a lot of hope that he'll finally say that there is a ceasefire. But there was, as usual, conflicting messages, and then the whole global stock markets fell down, oil went up. That is pretty much on par. But one can hope. The destruction it has caused to Pakistan's economy, even if there was a ceasefire tomorrow, because we were in a very painful stabilization phase, and so many CEOs that I had talked to had hoped that, okay, maybe not today, but 18 months, 2 years down the road, we can wean ourselves off the stabilization phase, go back to the growth economy phase. But now the budget is around the corner, this has happened. Even if there was a ceasefire tomorrow, how long will it take for Pakistan to regain the gains that it had made during the stabilization phase?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that the so-called stabilization, which was, yes, it was a stabilization, a stability, but a very unstable stability. And why do I say this? I say that it was an unstable stability because Pakistan didn't really have the kind of buffers, foreign exchange buffers, or a primary fiscal surplus, 3-4% of GDP. It was a very unstable stability, and I had talked about it at the time that if there is going to be, if Pakistan faces another shock, an exogenous shock, then things are going to become very difficult, and that is exactly what is happening right now. We didn't have a lot of buffers, but so I think that's the main reason why Pakistani economy, which seems to have avoided the worst outcomes of the Middle Eastern crisis, if you compare Pakistan to, say, India or the Philippines, because mind you, this crisis that has come about primarily because of the closing of Strait of Hormuz is a crisis for Asian economies, because 85% of oil and almost 84% of LNG is going towards Asian economies. So other Asian economies besides Pakistan, so we are talking about Vietnam, we are talking about South Korea, we are talking about Japan, India, they have been hit extremely badly compared to Pakistan. But yes, Pakistan has also been hit in terms of Pakistan has had to take certain energy conservation steps. I mean, we are already down to 3 or 4 days, working days in the week, and down the road, all of these things, fewer working days, less consumption of oil is going to feed into taking away from our economic growth. I mean, this is a kind of demand destruction that is going on, that down the road is going to have an impact on our GDP, which GDP growth was not stellar to begin with. So yes, I think in terms of the crisis, the government seems to have handled it, significantly well, but they are going to be, there is going to be an impact on our GDP growth. Is going to be smaller. As a result, job creation is going to slow down to almost nil, and then that could then feed into a social unrest crisis, because mind you, all of this increase in the price of oil increase in the price of fertilizer, what have you, is going to increase inflation by a few percentage points. I mean, I was just reading today that inflation has already gone up to about 7.8% year on year. And I think in the days to come, this is going to be in double digits very, very soon, which then is going to have an impact on our monetary policy, because they are going to have to increase interest rates. And again, that is going to feed into smaller economic growth compared to our forecast. So I think all in all, the government's handling of the crisis, I would give them a B+/A minus, since
That's
I'm
the
a
professor speaking.
But still, I think there are challenges, and we can talk about some of the challenges that I still see on the horizon for Pakistan.
So, on paper, I agree with you, but the March numbers for fuel consumption were higher than the previous one. I get it, there was Ramzan economy and there was Eid economy. And just anecdotally, recently I was at a furniture expo at Karachi Expo Center, and I'm like, aren't we not in the middle of a crisis? How are so many people, me included, able to afford all these furniture sets? Because there was no place to walk. Then again, when you look at the malls during Ramzan, many times I did try to go to DawnNews Mall. I couldn't because there was no parking. There were cars. So I just wonder, are people in denial to a certain extent, or do the people just expect that the war will be over soon, so they're not really going into conservation panic mode as yet?
Okay, so this is where me being an economist comes in. I think there is a very fundamental misunderstanding of the way we are approaching this issue. See, the government strategy is that whatever price increase happens in the international market, we are going to pass this on eventually after a certain hiatus or break to the final consumer. So if the price increase in the international market is 50 rupees, as an example, though it's going to be much more than that, we are going to pass this to the final consumer. And because of this price increase, eventually what's going to happen is that people are going to they are going to use less amount of oil. They are going to cut down on their oil usage, because now it costs more to fill up at the petrol pump. But the problem with gasoline is that, unlike other goods which face a downward sloping demand curve, this is the price elasticity of demand, or the demand curve for that matter, is inelastic, meaning that just like water and bread, if the price goes up, people are not going to give up using fuel. And this is exactly what is going on. So if you look at what is coming out in the news, our fuel consumption compared to last year was up by 24%. So the price mechanism that the government, it's the government's mainstay policy, it's not working very well. So I have said this before, I think the government has to move towards rationing of fuel at the petrol pump, meaning that they have to restrict the quantity of oil that is being used right now by curtailing how much fuel somebody can be able to purchase when they visit the petrol pump, because price mechanism by itself, by alone, is not a very good tool in the present situation. So I think that's one thing I would advise our policymakers to look at very, very seriously. Get into developing a mechanism for rationing fuel at the petrol pump. Bangladesh is doing it, Australia is doing it, a number of other countries are doing it, and this is something that we have to get very serious about.
I think you're right. I think that people will not stop consuming fuel, they will stop consuming other essential goods. Usually the first expenses that go down are health expenses and the girl education expenses. So these are the two places where we should not be able to afford a decrease on the household level, but that is what happens. The ammaji, the father, their health expenses get cut down, but the fuel expenses do not. Because even though we might have a 4 days working week, I personally don't know anybody or any organization who is actively enforcing it.
Right.
So they have to get to work. If they have to get to work, they'll cut down expenses elsewhere. Rationing might be a better tool, but then again, there has to be very strong implementation to prevent a black market from rising.
I think there are certain news coming, and I was watching an analysis that some of this increase in fuel consumption, 24% over last year, might be related to certain individuals or organizations stockpiling on fuel, because they are now predicting that the price of fuel is going to go up because the government won't be able to withstand this increase indefinitely. And I personally think it's not a very good policy. Whatever price increase is taking place in the international market vis-a-vis oil must be passed down to the final consumer. If the government wants to give a subsidy, it should be a targeted subsidy, to clients of Benazir income support program. I mean, don't give a fuel subsidy to somebody who drives a Land Cruiser.
Absolutely.
So I mean, the whole idea is I mean, I don't support giving a blanket subsidy to somebody who drives a Land Cruiser. Targeted subsidies are the answer. There are a number of ways in which we can triangulate information in order to make sure that people who are indeed getting BISP are deserving of this support. So we have data coming from NADRA, we have data coming from BISP, we have the National Socio-Economic Registry. FIA will tell you how many people travel abroad, how many times. There are utility bills, you can triangulate all that information. So yes, I mean, make your data really good, ensure that people who are getting this support through BISP are truly deserving of getting this support, but make your subsidies targeted. So I think, so the point that I was trying to make is that some of that increase, 24%, that has gone up year on year, some of that is indeed driven by stockpiling, by individuals who are now betting that government is going to have to pass on the price, and I think they may be right in this, and there is always this danger. So I think this is not a very good policy. I think you should pass on the price increase to the final consumers, but then give targeted subsidies to those who deserve it, and implement rationing so that your import bill stays within control, so that we don't lose control over our exchange rate, which is going to have devastating impact when it goes into sort of a huge depreciation vis-a-vis the dollar.
Which is what we saw during the Ukraine-Russia crisis.
Exactly.
In fact, when the Iran conflict started, there was this narrative that a lot of panic is being created by oil pump owners just to say that there is a decrease in supply so that they could push up prices and then enjoy the profits of the arbitrage. And again, there was the other narrative that no, the whole stock and flow argument of oil imports and oil purchases and storage came in. So I'm sure there's a lot of merit to what you're saying as well. But when you talk about targeted subsidies, I think the government did try. I mean, high octane prices got a huge increase in prices, and then they're supposed to roll out that app for motorcycles. But again, to roll out something that blanket across the country in such a short period of time, the implementation of it would be challenging, I'm assuming, having an app to subsidize petrol for 2 and 3 wheelers.
I think the previous point that you made about high octane prices going up, I think that's a very interesting point, and let me just talk about this a little bit. So what the government has done essentially is that they jacked up the prices on high octane and jet fuel. So jet fuel has gone up by 100% roughly in the international market, but in Pakistan, jet fuel has gone up by 150%. So what they are doing is that they are then, jacking up the prices for high octane and jet fuel, and then cross subsidizing those who are using it at the petrol pump. People using super, 91, 92,
right,
whatever grade fuel. Again, this is not a very good strategy. My advice to the government would be pass on the price increases to the final consumers, give target subsidies, and do not increase jet fuel prices by 150%, because this is now creating a very serious challenge for our aviation sector. I mean, aviation sector has already been hit very hard because the mainstay of our aviation sector. So let me just begin with the aviation sector in Pakistan. Already profits or margins in our not only in Pakistan's aviation sector, globally are razor thin. And the mainstay of Pakistan's aviation sector is people going and coming back to the Middle East. And because that traffic has taken such a bad hit, and the numbers have gone down, airlines in Pakistan are already suffering, and they are already on the verge of a liquidity crisis, a cash crunch, because of this 150% increase in jet fuel. This is not a very good strategy, because this has already put our aviation sector, all the airlines in Pakistan, under tremendous strain. And we don't want to be in a situation whereby our airlines have to ground planes just because we want to cross subsidize, use this cross subsidy for a bad policy, which is giving a general or a total subsidy to everybody, because subsidies should be targeted. We right now are giving subsidy to the person who is driving a Land Cruiser. This is not a very good strategy. So I would advise our policymakers to evaluate the situation, look at prices of jet fuel. You have increased it by 150%. This is not going to be viable for 95% of our airlines in the near term. It's a very serious situation.
Wow, 95% of our airlines. I think Profit recently did a story and said that the aviation sector has had $72 million in losses, 1,900 flights cancelled, 110,000 passengers are seeking refunds. There's a 20 to 30% increase in airfares. And all of this is coming at the backdrop that one of the biggest success stories of the current regime is taking PIA, the loss-making state-owned PIA, and privatizing it. And I think Arif Habib has already gone on air to say, like, we can't manage this. We can't run the airline in such a situation. So I know you have deep aviation industry knowledge. In such a scenario, what can an airline do?
Well, I think there are a number of things that they need to do. The first and foremost is to look at the cost side of things. I think you have to make sure that your operations are efficient, that you have no extra staffing right now, because this is one crisis that can then subsequently be turned into an opportunity. So I think you have to look at the cost side of things to begin with. The second thing that airlines need to do is to get into tactical decision making. The other day I took a flight from Lahore to Karachi, and I will not tell you which airlines it was. 30% was vacant. So I think in the current situation, this is absolutely something that cannot be done. So I think you have to make really good managerial decisions. You have to get into an entire demand management or crisis management mode, in which you have to look at the cost side. You have to make sure there are no extra expenses are being put on the balance sheet or your income statement, what have you. On the cost side, you have to really minimize the cost side. You have to take really good tactical decisions, meaning to say that you have to ensure that there is no extra room, there are no extra flights flying right now. And finally, you have to just make really good decisions. You have to have really great leadership, and because all crises are dependent on good leadership, and if you have really good leadership and management and you hold them accountable, I think there is still a possibility that we can get out of this crisis with our airlines intact.
So right now it's April. We are gearing up to the summer vacations, where there's a lot of domestic travel. Most of Pakistanis travel domestically, especially since the pandemic, especially since of demand destruction for international flights. And I think everybody would need a break right now. So with everything that is happening, and with the incomes being squeezed, with the profits being squeezed, do you think that the summers would see the same tourist activity in the northern areas that it usually is? Because that is a huge source of revenues for those areas.
I think they would see increased traffic compared to last year's, because tourism in the Middle East or Dubai or UAE has completely gone, if not zero, it's gone down a lot. So I think a lot of that traffic is going to get diverted towards Pakistan. So I think this is a lean time. This is a time when airlines need to make really good decisions. They need to make sure that they stay afloat, and this is where the government comes in. Government needs to reevaluate its decision to jack up prices for jet fuel to 150%. Government needs to ensure, and airlines themselves need to ensure, that they stay afloat. There is no liquidity crisis, and once this crisis wave gets, we are able to get away from this crisis blip, I think summer could be a recovery time for our airlines in a huge way.
So with everything that is happening in the country, with the purchasing power crunch, with the high inflation, do you think families, given that the summer vacation is around the corner, do you think the families will still be able to go to the northern areas to be able to afford their vacations? Because a lot of the livelihood of those areas are linked to the domestic travel industry.
I think that's a very important point. I think when it comes to local tourists, Pakistani, I think this is definitely the hike in the price of fuel, petrol, diesel is going to have a negative impact on tourism when it comes to tourism numbers for Pakistanis. But I think at the same time, tourist destinations have all but dried up in the Middle East. I mean, I don't think tourist traffic is going to pick up in the Middle East anytime soon. I think so. For that reason, northern areas are going to see a lot of international tourists coming in. So where local tourism is going to go down, international tourism is going to pick up, and this is where the airlines or the aviation sector is extremely important, because I think if they're able to sustain through this crisis, through really good decision making, through optimal decision making, I think they can take in a lot of revenue over the summer.
What kind of optimal decision making? What can they do? I mean, as you yourself pointed out, jet fuel prices increased 150%, so they can't bring down the rates. So what can they do?
I think the first thing that we need to look at is to request the government to look at, to reevaluate its decision to jack up jet fuel prices to 150%, because they are cross-subsidizing. So what they need to do is pass on the price increase to the consumer at the petrol pump, bring down the price hike from 150% to how much it's been in the international market, give targeted subsidies. But then there are a number of different decisions or things that different airlines can do in order to go through this crisis. And I think first and foremost is to develop a crisis management strategy. Every single airline should have a crisis management strategy in which they are looking at their liquidity or cash flow situation every single day or every few hours, because this is definitely something that could push some airlines towards a cash flow crisis. Matter of fact, I think some of them are already facing a cash flow crunch at the moment. So I think that's one thing that they need to do, be very, very dynamic about the information that is coming in. They need to have a really good revenue management strategy. They need to maximize unit revenue, minimize unit cost, and whatever steps need to be taken in order to maximize unit revenue. Plan your business routes, plan your commercial routes very, very carefully. There is no room to be flying airplanes when they are not at least 95%, if the seats are not 95% taken. There is absolutely no room for that. And on the cost side, you need to make sure that there is no wastage, energy wise, human resource wise. Just need to get into this frame of mind that we are going to conserve our costs or reduce our costs, minimize them as much as we can. And then finally, on time performance, because it has been seen. I mean, I think I was reading a study by McKinsey that came out on the aviation sector just a couple of months ago, and it said that every 1 minute delay in departure, airlines, they lose $100. So I think this is something that they can definitely look at, improve on-time performance. So just to recap, make a crisis management strategy, make a revenue management strategy, take really good decisions, and finally, tactical decision making. Make sure that there are no empty seats in the airplanes, because you absolutely cannot afford that at the moment.
If you're talking about the cost of delays, I think the cost that pile up for Pakistan Airlines must be huge. When I travel to Lahore and Islamabad, at the back of my head, I'm always prepared for an hour to 1 hour delay. And often the night before, we get the message that the flight is going to be 4 hours late. So in that scenario, most, if not all, our airlines are making losses. And this current crisis with the 150% hike in jet fuel prices would just exacerbate an existing problem. But then again, your suggestion of passing the price at the pump, the cost hike at the pump, that is extremely politically unpopular. Even with the amount that the government has absorbed, there have been many in the industry, in the populace who think that the government should be doing more. I do not agree. I think if the government doesn't pass it on, we'll be back to the Ukraine crisis era, back to the default. It has to be passed on. But then I do see the government's point of view as well, because nobody wants the effigies being burned on the street because they increase food prices.
Well, you do point towards a very important issue, something that I think our policymakers in Islamabad are constantly worried about. But I think this is where the ability to communicate well comes in. I think I have not seen, I think our policymakers have been so preoccupied with peace building in the region that this side, communicating to our citizens, has taken a hit. I think there needs to be better communication. I mean, people are smart, they are intelligent, they will understand what the situation is, but it needs to be communicated really well to Pakistani citizens.
Yes, I think there needs to be a lot more empathy and I think the political powers have to be a lot more careful about the optics of where they are spending money while they are announcing austerity measures. So because people do notice, if somebody has spending a lot on their mode of transport versus normal people not getting fuel for their motorbikes, then obviously there is going to be blood on the streets.
I would completely agree with you. I think this is not a time to be wasteful. This is not a time to show off. This is not a time to make those expenditures that you could have made in a different time. This is a time to conserve. This is a time to take smart decisions. This is a time to make optimal decisions. And so I think this is what my advice would be to our policy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the optics of having a smaller protocol, for example, it might not have any impact on fuel consumption in Pakistan because there are not that many. I mean, how many motorbikes can you really have in a cavalry in the protocol? But just the optics of it, the communication of it, it would be better. So on a different tangent, on a different note, given how well connected you are with the ministries of the GCC countries, I wanted to talk also about remittances and FDI. So GCC countries are extremely important for us. They're important because we buy oil from them, we get credit lines from them, we get loans from them, we need their loan rollovers, we export our labor to them, so we need those remittances. What we don't see, however, is investment. We really need their investment as well. So why wouldn't the GCC countries spend a few $1 billion, which would be like a rounding error for them within Pakistan's economy?
So I think I get this question a lot, and my take on this is that you really have to understand the ground realities of Pakistan's economy before you are looking towards any other country and asking them this question: why do you not invest in Pakistan? The ground realities of Pakistan are such that our labor is not very educated. When it comes to our own region, South Asia, I mean, Pakistan is probably at the bottom when it comes to years of schooling for our labor. So what that means is that the quality of our human capital is very, very low. So whenever somebody in a different country is thinking about investing in, say, Pakistan, they're also looking at the quality of our human capital, which is a function of your educational system and your healthcare system, both of which are in shambles in this country. So if your labor or if your workforce is taking time off because they are sick, and they're sick because they are drinking really bad quality water, if you are closing your schools at the drop of a penny, then your human capital is going to be really poor, and that different investors outside Pakistan are not going to invest. So I think that's one thing that we have to keep in mind, that we are in a competition with different countries. If your neighbors can offer better quality human capital, then obviously the money, international money, is going to go in that direction. The second point has to do with ease of doing business, which this government has made some very interesting announcements. There's a new digital authority that has been notified, but still, if you have to open a business, you have to go through so many different NOCs, affidavits, photocopies, attestations, what have you. So I think this is where our government needs to focus. We need to, for example, I will give you the example of a country in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, where I recently purchased a car from somebody who was sitting with me in a cafe across the table, almost like the way you are right now, and both of us were able to make that transaction in our phones in a matter of 20 minutes while sipping our coffee. So this is the ease of business that we need to create in Pakistan if we want to have any hope of attracting foreign direct investment.
Absolutely, we have digitization, fintech has grown, we have Rust, but when you look at the payment systems report, you see that a lot of transactions are being made at ATM as well, which is part of the digital, but then you are taking on cash. And the token side of digital transactions, so for example, the 1,000, 2,000 rupees you're loading on the mobile, that is there. If you want to buy gold, it's a cash transaction. So a lot of our big ticket investments or transactions are still in cash because of a regulatory environment, because of our taxes. So until unless those problems are solved, no matter how much we digitize, the benefits would be at the margin. Similarly, we have 5G now that the 5G auction has taken place. But again, if you do not have, say, fiber optic cables, then the benefits of 5G would be limited. So we have a lot of good policies in place, but not the right infrastructure and not the right implementation.
I completely agree. So there is a patchwork of certain quality nodes in the structure, but the lines connecting them or the supply lines of these nodes are of very poor quality. So I think we need to make the whole systemic improvements in our economic environment or regulatory environment in order to attract foreign direct investment. And if we feel that for some reason certain countries would invest in Pakistan because they are our friends, it is not going to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, they are going to do their own cost benefit analysis, and if Pakistan doesn't qualify, then money is not going to come here.
Absolutely, it's a business decision, not a friendship decision, not an ally decision. It's a purely dollars, cents business decision. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you.
So it was an absolute pleasure having you.